Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Adi Clevitt, a former engineer who built a thriving business around process documentation, and Michelle Baumberger, the CEO of a business law practice that has an innovative approach to client service. Today's episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit-maximizing solutions to small businesses. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO Group and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com. So before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Brian Kim of the Clear Value Tax YouTube channel. Brian featured my fledgling little YouTube channel on his channel, which had like 1 million subscribers at the time. I think I probably had like 5,000 or something at the time. Back in 2020, during the height of the PPP program, he featured my channel, and that was a major catalyst for growth for my channel. And it also introduced me to a whole new audience. And one of those viewers who was watching Brian's channel was Steve Kwan. Hi, Steve.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hi. So he was one of the viewers of that channel, and that's how he found Clara CFO. So thank you, Brian. If you want to stay up to date on tax information, political news, investing guidance, definitely check out the Clear Value Tax YouTube channel. So again, today's guest is Steve Kwan. Steve is a family guy who's been a part of 8 startups. Half of those were acquired and half burned to the ground. His words, not mine. He's personally founded 2 companies, sold his first one during the height of the dot-bomb chaos, is currently operating, growing, and scaling his second one, OpsWerks. He's on a mission to make work different through learning and serving, a focus on professional and personal growth, and a culture-first approach towards business and growth. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Steve, you are a client of Clara CFO. So thank you for being willing to come on and talk to us today. Your story is really inspiring. And the more I hear about it, the more I'm like, oh, other people need to know about what you're doing here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So your bio kind of hinted a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, but I was wondering if you could elaborate on it more for us, because I know it's quite extensive, but I'd love to hear more about just how you got to starting OpsWerks and where you are today.
Yeah, I think one of the earliest sort of memories for after graduating college and starting work was I joined another company. It was a consulting company that did network engineering and a lot of like IT operations. One of the things that happened in the first 6 months is it got acquired. And I said, oh, that's cool. I wasn't expecting anything because I just got there and I'm a kid. But I saw how some people were treated after the acquisition, right? There were people who served there like 10, 15 years and they got nothing from it. And I, personally, I just thought that was wrong. And so like me and a couple other of our my teammates, we said like that's not right. And we could do it better, right? We're young. And so we think we always could do everything better. And maybe naively, and good that we were naive, we started our own company. And this was Ignite. And we had a really great run. It was started in 1998, and we ended up getting acquired in 2001. But it was really influential for me just to know that a lot of the relationships that were formed then, a lot of the technologies and all the customers and all the things that we built, they're all gone. Right? There's nothing. Like most of them either out of business, got acquired, or just faded in the past. But the only thing remaining were people and relationships. And then from then on, like a lot of the other startups I would join subsequently there were from relationships that had been established there. And so I think that stuck with me really importantly for a couple of reasons. Is we still meet, and actually next week I'm meeting with some of the old teammates again. We kind of do an annual trip to kind of get together. It's been, 22 years. We were only in business for 3 years, and we've had 22 reunions since then.
Wow.
I think it's maybe a testament to something. But to me, it was something that was important. It's like people and relationships are the only thing that kind of last. And then after that time, I would join another startup, and I would try to always do the right thing. just be the best engineer I could, whether engineering, product management, product marketing, whatever different ways I served. Um, it actually helped me in my career. And so like there's an aspect of it, like when you do these things and do the best you can and you learn and you own your mistakes, I guess you become trustworthy. And since that, I think that second company that I went to, I've never had a resume since then. So for the X 6, 7 companies I joined, it was mainly like, hey, Steve, we're doing something over here. We could use you over here. Right now we go. And maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but they know I would try my best. And then I would learn to work with other people who thought and, sort of behave similarly. And we go do it again. It's like, oh, that didn't work out. We tried to reboot this company, didn't work out. Let's go to this other one. And oh, it worked out here. Okay, great. And then you sort of bounce back and forth. And as you go, you either build a reputation, and definitely you build your connections and your network. And that ends up actually protecting you and helping give you actually more opportunity. So, when you kind of give first, uh, you know, for the right reasons, right? Because it's just the right thing to do. What I found is that a lot of times those things come back. And that actually led to, this is a long circle, which is one of my customers in like 1998 for my first company, ends up becoming like my customer in 2015. So it's not like, hey, let me do the right thing for this guy because he will help me 17 years later. Like it's not that, but it's weird that it would come back that way. And that's actually the foundation for the company we have right now today at OpsWerks. All of our business and opportunity grew from that one relationship that we, try to do the right thing in 1998. And, in 2023, it's really helped us out a lot.
Wow. So I'm curious, were all of the startups that you were a part of, were they all in a similar industry or were they kind of a little bit all over the place?
I would say, yeah, they're mostly like, they're all startups in tech infrastructure or tech or network infrastructure. So a lot of like load balancing, scaling web scale stuff, internet facing things, scaling data. So they were all VC funded. So everything between my first startup and my current company, those are self funded. But everything in between was all VC funded. And so, get a lot of money in, grow fast, break a lot of things, and see if you can make it. And yeah, half did and half didn't.
What do you think? What do you think were some of the reasons that things didn't work out for some of those companies?
I think some of it is, you need so many things to go right, right? The timing, the market, your execution, your vision, so many things to go right for it just to even barely work. And then to like, a lot of these, the Silicon Valley is littered with lots of dead companies and I don't know, hundreds of billions of dollars of investments that just were obliterated, but it's a shot at things. And a lot of times we only hear about the survivors. And so I think, a lot of it will come down to like, you have to be lucky, but then you should be prepared to take advantage of that luck. So you're working hard. Are you guys putting in, are you the right approach, the right timing, the right team? I think a lot of it has to do with the team. If you get the right team together, they can see things and they can make the hard decisions. So maybe pivot. And so we've seen a few of these companies that, you look at some of the bigger sort of tech startups now. A lot of times what they started off with and what they are today are totally different. But they had sort of the humility and maybe the wherewithal to then switch and the courage to actually switch to do something different.
Right. Yeah. You don't have leadership that is like so tied to like their original idea that they will burn it to the ground if they don't get their way.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, success rates are so low in that environment. So, I actually your 50-50.
It's pretty high, I think, in overall. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think that is definitely beats the odds from what I know about startup communities. So can you tell the audience a little bit about what OpsWerks does?
Yeah. Simply, we are, a 24/7 technical operations company. We help our customers, build cloud operations, run them, so that, a lot of their, we typically work for larger enterprise companies, and they have incredible engineers and developers and product makers. But we typically run platforms that enable them to do their jobs. And so maybe they need a computing platform, maybe they need a data platform or something else. And we will help build platforms to allow them to be self-service. They can run anytime, 24 hours a day, all over the world. And then we help keep those things running. And so sometimes we do the grunt work that maybe most people don't know or appreciate. And that's something we're excited to do because we see a lot of our customers are doing amazing things that we can't talk about, but they do things that, that are publicly visible and seen. And we take a little pride and a little bit of, I think, honor in being able to help serve them and them making these things like, oh, we contributed some little way to that. So yeah, actually, one of the stories that popped to my head is, I don't know if it was true, but it's a great story, which is like, I think uh, President Kennedy was visiting the Space Center, and this was right before they're launching to the moon, and I think, you know, rumor has it or a legend has it that he was talking to a janitor, right, who was like kind of sweeping the floors, and he said something to the sort of like, "Oh, what do you do here?" And he goes like, "I'm helping send a man to the moon."
Mm,
Right. And I think that's the way we sort of approach things too. One of our, sort of internal like, beliefs is, or sort of our methods and values is around, being an anthembulo, which is a strange word, which is just someone who goes ahead, right? Who clears the way,
mm,
right? And I think we take a lot of pride and honor in knowing and embracing that, to like, hey, we might not be the superstar in front, but we help them, right? And then I think that's for us, where we take a lot of pride and honor in like helping others become what they could be. And
mm,
I think that falls in our company culture from, the beginning and how we take care of our people. And they embrace that and then they take care of others that way too.
mm. I love that. Did you always start the company kind of with that in mind of like that was kind of a concept that you wanted to grasp
Yeah.
onto?
Yeah. So that was actually sort of, I guess bringing it all back. Something I came to learn from the first company I was at and all the other companies I went to between was some of the companies we're really actually successful at, but a lot of times we kind of hated every day being there. And there are other companies that were like, we literally closed the doors together and we loved every moment until the day we had to close the doors. Right. And the only difference is the people and relationships. And so for this particular, season of my life, this company that we started, um, we were very deliberate about that. These relationships last. So let's be deliberate about them. Right. And the order of events is really important, right? Like, when we were VC, the VC funded startups, we should have understood what we're getting ourselves into, right? You get to make all the decisions as long as you're delivering the numbers. As soon as you're not, you don't get to make any of the decisions, right?
Mm,
And that's okay. Like that's the nature of the beast, right? For this particular company, knowing what we know now, we self-funded it, all right? And we're very deliberate. Like a lot of times the things that we want to do don't fit nicely in a quarterly end or a yearly end. Sometimes they take a little bit longer, right? It all depends on what we're trying to do. So for this particular company, we are, our mission's a little bit different, right? We're trying to build like long-lasting, lifelong relationships because I've seen how valuable and meaningful, impactful it was for my life.
mm.
It would be, I think, I guess unreasonable or like, not right not to do that for others. And I have children too, so I would love for someone to be able to, or my kids in the future, to join a company that cared about them as much as I cared about them.
Yeah.
But if I do that for someone else's kids, I have zero sort of expectation that that could ever happen. So maybe I'm trying to pay it for my kids, but I think at the end of the day, it's sort of the right thing to do, right? Take care of your teammates, and that's what we do. So the company takes care of its people. The people actually take care of each other first, right? Then we're actually more, I think together as a team, we can bring better ideas, and then that actually serves our customers and partners a lot better. And
Mm,
then those customers and partners may want to work with us some more. And we've been doing this for, we're going almost on to our ninth year now. And we see it working, right? It's slow grow at the beginning, and then now we're having trouble sort of keeping up. Um,
yeah. It's a good
yeah,
problem to have
yeah,
when you're
it's a great problem to have.
when you're growing an agency or I guess a consulting company like this. I mean, I guess like a service-based company. I guess you
Yeah,
wouldn't really call it consulting, would you? In
yeah, it's
your
more of a service based company. Yeah,
Yeah, services, technical services. Um, I think people need to know how your team is structured because it's very
oh,
unique in that
mhm.
there is an international component, a large international component, and a sort of a smaller local US based. Can you tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that?
So originally we were formed in California,
Mhm.
and we have most of sort of our, I guess, the company headquarters and all of our customers and sort of the partnership success team. They're all based in California. but all of our engineers are based in the Philippines. Right now, it's in Manila and Cebu. And people always ask like, well, why the Philippines? I think it always falls back to like what I've said before. It's like it's about people and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So in one of my prior, companies I worked at a company called Trend Micro, and I had a team in the Philippines as well, and built great relationships with people. They're incredibly warm, incredibly supportive, resilient, hardworking, fun to be with. Just um, everything I really enjoyed, and they embraced me. Like I came in as a new director over there, and usually, like when you come in with like new management, people are not necessarily wide open for that. And I found the exact opposite. And I ran teams in China, Europe, all over the U.S. and Germany, and all those. And they're great. All my teams are like fantastic people in there, but there was this collective warmth and ability, and just I think hardworking with a good attitude can get you so many places,
Mm.
and that's what they were, and that's what they embraced me. And for me, um, I've always dreamed about starting a new company since I sold my first one in 2001. Um, and in my mind, it's like, oh, these are the people I want to work with, and specifically, there are specific individuals I want to work with again, right?
Mm.
So if I was to start something new on my own and fund it myself, we should pick everything that we want in it. And it's like I would love to spend more time with these people because they inspire me to become better, right? They, the resilience and the warmth in a middle of adversity, right? Like a typhoon will hit, they just like dust off. It's like, yeah, we get back at it. And what would have normally crushed me or someone else, I just saw amazing culture there, and I wanted to be more like that. And so starting the company in the Philippines was an obvious thing for me.
Yeah.
And they took the jump, right? It's relationships too, right? It's like, I'm going to ask you to quit your stable company that you've been at for like, I don't know, 5, 10 years, stable jobs, you have your families and everything else, and come join me. We have no customers. We have nothing. I might be able to pay you for maybe 6 months or not. And um, it took a relationship for them to make a leap of faith like that. And it wouldn't have been possible. This whole company wouldn't have been possible if they didn't do that. It would just be a dream. So,
Yeah. How many people started with you when you
so
first
at the
asked them?
start, we had 8 people.
Wow.
We had 8 people.
Yeah.
And yeah, and a lot of the customers we serve at the beginning, they're massively larger than we are, right? So like they could over hire what we had, but again, there's a relationship that we had before that gave us an opportunity. We had a relationship and a reputation, right? It's like
Mm.
they knew that we would, whatever we would go after, we would just die trying, right? And that if we couldn't get it done, it's quite possible it can't be done. And so, but that's an earned reputation, right? Like you have to do it a lot consistently over long periods of time to have that reputation. And we've earned that, and we work well to protect it, but we're not afraid to take on new risks. A lot of times you'll be risk adverse because we have a reputation to protect. But
Mm.
the reputation we have is like we come to help. And if we can't help, we will point you to someone else who can help you. And so that's a real reputation we have, right? It's not that we're always successful, that we don't make mistakes. We make lots of mistakes. But I think what we're good at is like, well, we recognize it, then we own it. And when we own it, we can make it better. And we try to build a culture around that and make that safe to do. Like we embrace, everyone says you embrace failure, but it's hard to embrace it. And we try our best to do it. And at least for at least myself, I try to like, here's all the ways I mess up, right? And here's all the ways, and here's how I realize it, and here's how I get better from it. And a lot of times our customers or our partners, they actually don't see our mistakes, but we still tell them about them
Mhm.
because it builds trust. And
Mm.
then trust is the key foundation for any relationship.
Yeah. And that's the right thing to do, which just goes back
It's
to what
just
you
the
were
right thing to
saying
do.
before. It's just the right
Exactly.
thing to do. Um, so the business has grown
Mhm.
significantly since you started with 8. You are up to what, like
We're about
130
130
employees?
plus. We
Okay.
also like, in sort of figuring things out, we also built out an academy. So, if we wanted to grow people, what are we doing to invest in others? And so we actually built an academy on the side that's partly integrated with the company. But a lot of times we will take, college new grads or maybe first job, second job, folks who don't have all necessarily the experience or the skill sets necessary to actually join us. So we built this academy. Um, we actually pay our students and we invest heavily into them. And if they can make it through the system, they're guaranteed a full-time, offer from us to join our production teams.
Mm.
And so like, it's the same thing, right? It's like we take care of people first, and then, in return later on, they could help us out later. Right. So we try to do things first before we like ask anything of them. So it's like no risk for them. They're going to come out paid, trained, exposed to like a lot of new technologies. And if they don't make it, they're better prepared. Right. So sort of our model is to take care of other people. This is just sort of following that sort of ethos. And we have a very high graduation rate, right? Because we always want people to be successful. So we'll come in, we'll rally around them, we'll help support them. And what we found is that we build these micro communities, right? These, sort of batches of academy. They form like really like, you know, sometimes I'm a little envious, like these tighter bonds, right? They welcome me in, which is great. But when I see how they interact with each other, there's a closeness to them because they experienced something that was very intense, right? The onboarding and training and learning, and then their success, it was all together, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think was, we're using, I guess, maybe human psychology for good, right? And we're not trying to manipulate them or anything else. We're trying to do the best for them, and then create a community for them, and then welcome them into a wider community, but prepared for it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're like 130 plus now, and we're hiring. So if you're listening and you're based in Manila or Cebu, we'd love to hear about you. But also, yeah, the academy, we accepted this particular, we call them batches. This batch was like 28 students.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's incredible too, because you're taking, basically people straight out of school, they have a lot of ambition, they're ready to get their careers going, and you're able to bring them into this, family, like leaving straight from school and coming into like a work environment where they can feel loved and supported, and get the technical training that they need to be able to then go and work in a really great job. I mean, I know that one of your big things is that, compensation is more competitive. You pay better than a lot of people do. And then also your benefits and everything else, like your training, your onboarding, your leadership, intensity, and the opportunity for growth internally is really important for your employees. So I guess like how are you able to do that, really being with a team overseas and having that people first approach and culture first approach? Like, what are some of the things that you have in place to be able to like actually implement that on the ground when you're so far away?
Yeah, I think what makes it possible, or maybe even easier, sustainable, is you have to have good relationships. And so I think early on, I had a discussion with my wife before we started, like, okay, she basically said like, hey, you keep talking about starting something new. It's been like 14 years since you had your own, right? Why don't you, why don't you just go ahead and go, just get it done with? Because it's going to drive you crazy, right? If you don't do it. So I think the first thing was just getting support of my wife. We had 3 kids at the time, one infant, one really little one. I asked her like, what is it that you need from me, right? To be able to do this, right? And she asked the same thing. It's like, well, what do we need to do, right? It's like, how much of our life savings do we need to put into this, and how much time do you need, right? So then we sort of define those aspects. Okay, it's this, and it's going to be at least a year. I need at least a year. In return, she said, like, hey, I need this many family dinners a week, right? I need you to be with the kids, help put them down, and after they're down, you can go back to work, right? Because I just know that startups are going to be this way. And so we had a really good understanding at the beginning. What that required was then I had to travel, right? I have to be there. I think that what makes it possible, completely, to be honest, is like my initial team over there were people I worked with and trust. So I really relied on the existing relationships that we had. We knew each other from the previous company, but we don't know each other like we do now, right? Because it became a lot more intense. And then we kept shuttling, our team would come over, visit the US, and I would go over there, and the whole US team would go over there, and we go back and forth. And this exchange is what sort of sets the foundation for things to work. So if you don't have that pre-existing relationship out there, it will make it difficult. I think the other thing too that makes it a little bit maybe easier, sustainable, is like if you don't have a set of core beliefs that are really well defined, and then what, defining what they actually look like in the real world, um, it becomes very difficult, right? And then everyone has no problem taking care of things in a good situation, a good season. But really, I think what's important is like when you define that culture, is like, how do we want to behave when we're under stress, we're under pressure, when we make a mistake, when we have a misunderstanding, right? Kind of like identify those different scenarios. This is what I expect our behavior to be, right? To do this thing, right? To have the hard conversation, right? So sometimes it's like, you know, and I'm learning this better as we kind of go through more examples is, sometimes it's nice to, use carrots and sticks. So I prefer more carrots, right? I just generally prefer that because I think they last longer and they're better. And I was for a while like no sticks, right? No sticks, unlimited retries and redos. What I learned from that, that's not actually the right thing in all situations. Sometimes it is, you know, if someone isn't going to make it, like, let's say from a technical capabilities point of view, what I learned from this experience is like you're torturing them. They
Mm.
know they're not good enough. They can't keep up. You keep putting more attention and trying to help and support them, but that puts actually negative pressure on them. And what I learned later on when we ended up separating, helping him get another job at another location, it's like a year or two later, it's like, I'm thriving, right? It's like, I'm thriving, right? It's like he was barely making it maybe as an IC. And like 2 years, he's a team lead at this other place. So if we don't recognize those situations early on, um, you're robbing opportunity. But I think going back to the point of like, how do you run a remote company? You have to spend a lot of time, right? So it's like optimizing the schedule of when my meetings are is really important. And the Philippines, we overlap basically after 3 p.m., West Coast time.
Yeah.
So that means I have to, lots of late nights sometimes,
Mm.
right? At the beginning. And then, but with the idea that like, what things can we put in place, processes, frameworks in place to minimize that? And to make some sacrifices or optimizations, right? It's like I meet with the U.S. team in the mornings, right? Also, Fridays is Saturday in Asia, all right? So it's like, but then Sundays are Mondays for them.
Right.
So you should end up having to shift a little bit at the beginning. Um, but I think with the intention to becoming efficient and enabling people to make more decisions, then you can shed the Sundays and then you can work more of a regular sort of US or local schedule.
Mhm.
So I think those will help. But it's like defining the framework, or I think defining really heavily the culture is like, here is how we tend to respond in these situations. And if they're really well defined, then you can let people play in that playground and you can just define the edges. And then when we cross over the edge, then it's like, okay, hey, we crossed over and all right, we missed it here. And then this is how we're going to recover. Right.
I have a question just about like
Mhm.
real practically
Yeah.
how
How do we
how
do it?
you
Yeah.
infiltrate the culture into everything that you do because it, I mean, I know you do these like big, team retreats and you have,
Mhm.
team leads and you have like a very distinct like onboarding process with all of your employees. But like, how do you get everybody rallied around and how do they
Mhm.
understand the culture? Like, what are some of the like really like tactical ways that that happens?
Yeah. So as far as like spending time, tactically, what I do today, it's once a quarter. I'm in the Philippines. I'm
Hmm.
there for at least 10 days,
Hmm.
and I visit our multiple locations, and I schedule like a lot of like meetings. So when we were smaller, it's all one on ones,
Hmm.
and now that we're larger, it's like small group meetings. I have to change. I can't meet individually with everybody anymore,
Right.
right? But also that would be stealing opportunities from my teammates, right? Like from them to like help guide and coach other people. Um, and so I think it's like you know practically that's what I do. And then we also have a rotation of folks coming over from the Philippines. Pandemic froze everything for a little bit, and that was hard. But now we're like lighting things back up and bringing people back over, right? Because it's important for them to see the team over here in our situations, and then meet face to face with our customers and partners, so they can really build a real relationship. Zoom is great. This is fantastic,
Yeah.
but doesn't replace face to face. I think also, our culture defines like has a framework in which we answer certain questions. If they don't do these things, be the anthem bureau, build healthy communities, making things meaningful, and then growing and going. If it doesn't tick those boxes, if it doesn't help us with our mission and align with our beliefs, then we just say no. And so some of the activities we do, like, so one of the things that we we wanted to be able to celebrate. This was a lesson learned. So a lot of things that we have is actually, they're all lessons learned that were painful, hurtful, uncomfortable, regrettable. And we combined at least I combined all those negative experiences. And I said, like, what's the opposite of all this? And this is kind of what we came up with. So one of the startups we were at, you know, my particular sales team was killing it, and we went out of business. We all got paid really well, and no one's stock was worth anything. And I was like, this is wrong. This is like something weird, not right. And from that was born and then also, like, if you're like top salespeople, there's like a CEO club, right? It's like, oh, you go to the CEO club, you go somewhere nice and fancy, and that's great. Well, what about the engineer who made the product, or a customer support person who was supporting that customer? There was nothing for them. So there was always like weird, I get it, well, kind of things that just felt a little bit off for me. And it's like, well, what would the opposite be? It's like, oh, we invite everybody. So we celebrate the whole company, right? It's like, it's our birthday, right? So it's a birthday party. We go somewhere, somewhere nice, usually somewhere the team hasn't been to before, and just to give exposure. And then we spend a week together sharing stories. Everyone takes turns. We don't filter out. We don't pre-select. We don't, it's all volunteer, and we don't review what they say, right? So it's a little bit like kind of risky, right? But that's okay, right? And so we have people share their stories about their personal growth, struggles they've gone through, how the teammates help, and it becomes really inspirational. And the fact that people are willing to speak personally in front of everyone is sort of proof that how we create a community that is like safe, right? Can you be you? Can you be imperfect, right? And can you get help, and can you grow? It's like all these things. So that became really important for us to do. And we experiment with different variations of it. We were inviting spouses at the very beginning, and they would speak, and like, whoa, what will happen there? And it was really inspirational for us to hear how the changes of the teammates we have were reflected in the home life. And even one year we invited all the kids, and then we got feedback. It's like, oh, the parents didn't want the kids. Like, right? They want to enjoy
break.
themselves. Yeah. And so we transpose it against like our culture. And we say, like, hey, how does this help? One of the feedback we got from serving the spouses, because we were doing these spouse events, and there was feedback we got around, it adds a lot of pressure to them. I have to attend, but I have limited vacation. And this is not a real vacation for them, right? It's a vacation for the spouses, but it's not a vacation for the teammate, because we're still operational, right? So we have to do this, leapfrog thing, right? We launch a team in the air, they land, they establish communications, set up operations, make sure everything's working. And then we launch the next team over, right? Shut down Manila, Cebu, and then fly over to our new location. And we have to do this in chunks, because planes are so big. We can't take anything on. Our customers can't be interrupted. We're 24/7. And so, but it caused us to solve different things, right? And at the end of the day, it was mainly because, we don't know how long we will be in business for. Nothing lasts forever. There's all these things that could happen that will drive you out of business. So while things are good, celebrate is what I learned, right? And so, yes, we could save the money. And what I've seen is in other, like some of the startups I've been at, those who held out the longest got the no package, right? Those who left earliest got it. And that felt wrong to me too. It's like, how do we balance it? If I can't read the future, right? And if things are good now, then be generous now.
Yeah.
Right. So that, because then later on, you may not have that opportunity. So that kind of like fed into our culture of like, okay, this is how we will express it this way. And then it was all about like personal growth and sharing. And some of our teammates gave us feedbacks like, hey, we're technical. Can we do a tech conference? Because we kind of miss sharing the technical stuff. It's like, yeah, let's not mix the two. So we then had a separate tech conference that people can speak and share how they learned and grew. But what's amazing is like in the technology growth and all the things that they've learned, there's an underlying story of like personal growth and relationships underneath there. Right? It just always happens to be like, I learned these things, or these, we had this outage or this issue, and so helped. This is typically the story, right? And I learned something through that, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you have a really well-defined culture, right? And I think like you can, there are ways you can do it, and you can copy everyone else, but really if it doesn't come from the leadership team in their core belief, because it's like otherwise you're acting and not just being. Like all the things that we have in our culture, it's like all the things I believe in for myself and hope for myself. And all I'm doing is looking for other people who want the same, right? We're not for everybody. Specifically, we're not for everybody, right? But we should be really for, what we're about. So if you're into personal growth and trying to discover who the best person can be of yourself, and through that, you believe helping others to do the same is the way you're going to find it, this might be the place for you. And it's challenging, right? It's not like, hey, you're delivering, but it's like, I know you can do more.
Mm.
I know you're capable of more, right? How do I help you, right?
Mm.
And then the same thing gets asked of ourselves too. So the culture is what happens when no one's looking, right? And if I don't exemplify it first, I can't expect that of anyone else, right? Then I'm a fraud, right? I'm a hypocrite. Don't listen to me then, right? And so, like, I try to use my life as the example. I'm not perfect, and I own it, and I get better, and that frees us from having to be perfect, right? And then I try to share that with my team. Okay, your turn, right? Your team won't follow you until you demonstrate it for them, right? And so here's the good ways, and here's the ways I failed, and here's how I recover. And I think really important is like if you have the culture defined, then you know what the standard is. And then if you have a good recovery framework, like this is how we recover. We own things. We are responsible for them, right? We make things right. We reconcile things, right? We talk about the hard things. And then there's not this baggage when issues happen. So you don't go from like, hey, we were here at like a 0, right? An outage or an issue, right? A misunderstanding takes you to a -1. But how you recover doesn't bring you back to 0. You have an opportunity. If you recover well, it goes a +1, +2.
Yeah.
I was like, I could trust you. When things are down and things are bad, I could trust you. And that's really where the real test is.
Mm. I love that. In all of that, I'm like, this is a person who's done a lot of personal growth.
Personal pain first and then personal growth,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well,
Maybe.
it's all
Yeah.
part of the process, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to know just what you've done personally
Mhm.
over the past, like, I mean, you've had a 20-year plus career, but
Mhm.
kind of as you've been growing OpsWorks, what are some of the things that you've done to invest in your personal growth?
I think more recently, so, I think there was like a year, I'm not a big reader, right? So it's like reading was like college and required, and I did it because it was required. And I'm a slow reader, right? So
Me
I
too.
didn't read for a long time. Most of the times I'll read like technical manuals, right? So it's like when it was apart from my job, I would do it and I get really good at that. Um, I think when on the personal growth side, it was a lot of it's like painful reflection, right? It's like, and then realizing other people ran into those problems too. And then I could just shortcut that. Right. It's like, oh, I should go talk to someone. So a couple things for my personal growth are I talk to people who are 10 years older than me and 20 years older than me. And I
Mm.
really try to suck in as much of the sort of the characteristics of the problems they're running into now. And to believe that I'm probably more like them than not like them. Then what do I need to set up so I can maybe avoid that in the future? Right. Because I think when I reflect back, when I'm in my 20s, ego is really high and capability is very low. Right. So they gave me very solid advice. Older people gave me really solid advice, but I couldn't receive it well. So I'm trying to make sure I receive it better now, because I'm actually seeking it out. The other thing too is, reading books. Like I read a few books out there. Others have recommended. For me, I think I really gravitated towards like Stoicism, and that was a late introduction. I
Mm.
probably got in like 2014. That's when I was first introduced to it. It's a great book called The Obstacle's the Way. You can read the original, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, all these other guys. Harder for me to read. I just can't read it.
Right.
I need someone to translate it for me, right?
Yeah.
And use modern stories for it. And Ryan Holiday's book was tremendous for me. And that's actually something I reread / re-listen to multiple times a year. So it's like The Obstacle is the Way and The Ego is the Enemy. And then Jocko's like Extreme Ownership.
Mm.
Um, Other things that have been helpful for me, like Simon Sinek's, like Start with Why and
Yeah.
Leaders Eat Last. Those have resonated with me because I've seen it in others and leaders I admire. It's like, oh, that's exactly what I'd like. I enjoyed receiving those things. So then that means like that's probably in my nature and I need to go pursue those things. So for a while I was reading those books, and then one year it's like 20 books or 30 bucks. And what I realized after doing that, most of the stuff is kind of like been said. So I don't need more. I just need to execute more on it. So
Right.
I went back to the ones that resonated with me the most, and keep going back to that and just get great at that. You know, actually, Sheila Heen's like, thanks for the feedback. Fantastic. I love that because it's like feedback is hard to get, right? It's imperfect and all these other things, and you don't think it's justified, but like it's so critical when you get that feedback. And then you can apply it to the system, right? It's like, oh, when I get the feedback, and then apply extreme ownership. When I get that feedback, I can apply stoic approaches, right? Like, hey, like there's the emotions you feel, and there's like the character you want to be. How can you respond in the way of the character you want to be?
Mm.
And so, and more recently, I picked up probably last couple of years more coaching support. Um, so more on like sort of executive coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and then get experts in like I have you and the team to help me on the finance side, right? Getting coaching for different areas. Got what do you call it? A fitness coach, right? Like just accountability, right? If I'm not healthy, I can't do things for long periods of time, especially with the travel and
Yeah.
the hours. Like I need to be in better shape. And then sort of lastly, around like my family side, it's like, my wife and I, we do preemptive counseling, right?
Mm.
Like counseling and coaching in my mind are the same thing. One's before the problem, one's after the problem, right? So it's like, all right, so like I'd rather see a fitness coach than a surgeon, right? I'd rather
Right.
see rather approach my counselor or marriage counselor or couples counseling, and especially for parenting. That's been super helpful for us, right? An objective third party whose only goal is like the team success, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things I've been investing in to, and then just taking more quiet time. I'm trying actually to be ruthlessly uh, deliberate about what I have in my life. And it's
Mm-hmm.
been cutting hobbies out that are not aligning with my beliefs and helping me get to the person I want to be. A lot of them, they're not bad. They're just distractions. And I think for this particular season of my life, I just have limited, um, you know, time and energy. And I just want to go for things that are worth it. Right. By definition, we're like, I guess like we're all dying every moment of the day, right? We're all dying. So what am I willing to die for? Right. Because I'm already dying anyways. So what are the things that are the most meaningful and impactful, align with my belief? And to do just those things.
Yeah. That's
It
good.
makes things simpler. I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
guess at this age,
I
I just
mean,
want something simple, clear
yeah.
and simple. You
Stripping
know.
away the stuff that's just the noise. I'm reading that book called The Comfort Crisis. Have you
Mm-hmm.
read that
No,
or
I
heard it
haven't.
or read it? It's a lot of, we've just padded our lives with entertainment and made ourselves so comfortable all the time. And it probably is a lot of like that stoic,
Mm-hmm.
mindset, but it just stripping away, the things that we've just continued to add for one reason or another. And it's
Yeah.
definitely caused me to think about like, what am I doing with my time?
Yeah.
Really?
And we all seek
And
comfort, and that's not a bad thing. It's
yeah,
natural, right?
yeah,
Because things are
it's very
hard.
natural.
But then there's a byproduct of that too much, right?
Yes.
Ice cream. I love ice cream.
Yes.
Too much is not good. Like comfort. I
Exactly.
like comfort too, but like also like challenging. I think forcing discomfort when you can choose discomfort,
Yes.
right? I think like the other thing that's helped me too is like I've been so wrong in my life in so many things. So my like one of my tests for things, I like using frameworks is I assume I've been wrong, right? And so my gut reaction typically has been wrong, right? So it's like, oh, I want to do this, right? Then I actually test myself like I should do the opposite of that, right? It's like I don't want to have that hard conversation with someone, so I should probably have that hard conversation with someone. I don't want
Mm.
to do that now, right? I should do that now, right? And what I've learned is like when I reflect on all the mistakes I've made and then eventually after resolving them, and when I look back, what would I have done differently? Two things. I wish I'd recognized it sooner. I wish I did something about it sooner. That's like 95% of like all the mistakes I've made. So let me just presume that that's going to happen again. So,
Mm.
you know, do the hard thing right now, right away. And later on, it'll be better. Because I think I struggle, and maybe other people struggle with it too, is like to cast, like, figure out, like, what's the future worth of something, right? All I could focus on, like, the immediate pain and discomfort, and I don't want to do it, versus, like, what will I really feel 10 years from now because I didn't do it,
Right.
right? And so, like, okay, well, if I can't future cast right, let me just hack my environment to just do hard things find the hardest thing to do and assume that's right and do it sooner. That's it. And more often than not, that has worked really well for me. I wish I had done it sooner.
Yeah. Well, that's convicting because I'm always like putting things off. But yes, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I've never really felt regret from doing something sooner rather than later. Right. I
Yeah.
mean, there's almost
Or if
never.
you've done it later, right? And
Yeah.
you look back and you're like, I should have done that sooner.
Yeah.
It's most of the time, right? So if we know that's going to happen, might as well just do it now.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a good reminder. I know we're coming up on our time here, and I feel like I could keep talking to you for sure for a long time. But I have one last question to ask.
Mhm.
But before I ask it, I want to make sure that I point people to your website, which is OpsWorks. That's WERKS
Mhm.
.com. And I know that you guys are hiring in the Philippines. And I know that that is really your business is really interesting because you have a capacity it is like supply and your people is actually
Mhm.
what is the like hardest part for continuing to grow. Like revenue, you can go and get new contracts, but
Mhm.
your team and getting the right people on the team is one of those like limiting factors. So I know you guys are pretty much always hiring at this point and
Yes.
attracting really great talent. So if anybody's listening that knows anybody in the Philippines that's looking for an amazing place to work, definitely check out opsworks.com. Um, but the last question I have for you is what is the best piece of financial advice you've ever gotten?
Hmm. I think that I didn't understand it at the I think at the beginning, which is like really investing in yourself. A lot of times, like we want to invest in, I'm coaching my kids right now, and they're investing in, they started working and they're like, oh, I want an IRA and put money in. They see the power of compounding because they're like 17 and 15 and 12, and that's great. They got a great start. But
Amazing.
what would be even better for them? And I think I'm taking it more seriously now. I wish I did it earlier, which was like investing in myself and what that really means, right? So like I think investing, understand like what are my real beliefs, and then making sure my life walks that direction. Um, and then investing in the skills necessary, right, to get those things, right, to provide either value to myself, right, and then but really my identity is like I like to help people. So what makes me a greater helper? Investing in that, and then people want to have great helpers around them in different facets, whether it's like marketing or sales or partnerships or whatever. So I think like a lot of times we'll look at, oh, let me invest in stocks or cryptos. There's nothing wrong with that. I do that, right? Real estate, great. But I think taking that first chunk and make sure you invest in yourself, right? Not necessarily like entertainment or distractions, like really deliberately, like what are the hard things I should go learn, right?
Mm,
Or who do I need to spend time with, right? That can accelerate things, right? For example, not trying to plug you, but it is great. You guys have so many years of experience. I get access to all that experience for paying just a little bit because I don't have the time to put 10, 20,000 hours into it. I
yeah.
don't even have the interest in it, but you guys have already done that and we can tap into that. I think those are different areas of your life that you can invest in that. And it looks like it's like, oh, that's expensive. But what I wish I learned better is like, it is expensive not knowing
Yeah.
and it's expensive learning it the hard way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I wish I had known more around like finances is like really deeply invest in yourself. And then when you find out there's nothing left, then I can go do those other things because now I've earned more skills and more abilities. I provide more value, and then maybe you'll make more money or you get more opportunities. And that compounds off a bigger number.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's what I wish I had done a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
Right, sooner. I
Yeah.
wish I saw it
Again.
sooner. I wish I had done it sooner. Yeah.
Again, it comes back to that. Well, that's inspiring. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that. And is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up today?
No, I guess like the last thing is like, I hope for everybody, whoever's listening or watching this, that you go figure, go discover the person you're supposed to be and then just go do that. And if we all do these things, I guarantee, I can't help but to think that the world and everything and the communities we're a part of, we might not change the whole world, but we'll definitely change the communities we're a part of to make it better. And I think that's a good thing. And it's, utilizing the potentials we have. So I'm hoping everyone else does the same thing because I'm trying to do that too.
Yeah. Awesome. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
All right, my pleasure. All right, take care.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.